The cursed seal cracked Boruto's skin while the kid's body floated above a pool of his own blood. Can you imagine the sick irony of seeing the greatest hero in the ninja world watching his own son turn into the monster that will destroy everything? Knowing the only salvation required violating the most sacred laws of life and death just to try and fix what already felt completely lost. A few hours before this absolute chaos exploded in everyone's faces, Naruto was kneeling in the center of a completely isolated underground chamber in Konoha, coughing violently while feeling his own chakra drain away in a way he had never experienced since the day he permanently lost Kurama. Without the nine-tailed fox to heal his body's wounds or sustain his life force at massive levels, using the pure soul summoning jutsu was practically a silent death sentence. But he kept pushing the seal on the stone floor, without an ounce of pity for himself, while Sasuke watched from afar with a look of pure anguish and mute despair. The process was draining the Hokage's life force so much that the ancestral scrolls around them began to burn and crumble into flying ashes, forcing Naruto to bite his own lip until it bled heavily, all just to not lose focus and try to maintain the stability of the spiritual portal he was forcing open in the middle of the dark void. It was exactly at this absolute limit of physical pain and exhaustion that a golden and red flash tore through the heavy darkness of that damp cave, bringing back to the world of the living the overwhelming and imposing presences of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, who materialized their physical bodies with an initial expression of pure confusion and genuine shock. The reunion you were so hyped to see didn't have long hugs or instant smiles of relief, because Kushina realized in the very first second that her son's aura was completely weak, feeling pure terror chill her spine when she couldn't find a single trace of the tailed beast she herself had sealed inside him on the day of her tragic death. Even before Minato could formulate any logical question about the deplorable state the village hero was in, the heavy wooden doors of the chamber were violently thrown open, revealing Boruto's exhausted figure dragging himself across the floor while clutching his right arm, which throbbed with a terrifying intensity and let out a high-pitched noise. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat in the physical pain to look deeply into his parents' eyes and reveal the bitter truth he had been hiding from the entire world, explaining that the Otsutsuki parasite named Momoshiki was rewriting the boy's DNA minute by minute, and that the only weapon capable of trying to save his heir was a knowledge that had died with the fourth Hokage. The gigantic problem is that teaching the flying Raijin and the adamantine sealing chains to a vessel about to be possessed wasn't just a tough job, it was a literal game of Russian roulette with the fate of the entire ninja world, because any flaw in the chakra flow would make the seal advance even faster and devour Boruto's mind once and for all, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Kushina activated her sealing chains in an incredibly fast protective reflex, while Minato drew his classic three-pronged kunai. But in the exact millisecond the weapons touched the kid's skin to start the healing ritual, Boruto's blue eyes completely disappeared and gave way to a white and empty stare that froze the blood of everyone in the room. The twisted smile that tore across the young Uzumaki's face didn't belong to the loving son Naruto knew, marking the exact instant Momoshiki's crushing presence flooded the room with a cold and repulsive aura that made the oxygen feel too heavy to be breathed by any normal human being, showing the parasite had awakened way earlier than the most pessimistic calculations predicted, and that he was starving for destruction. Without hesitating for a single second, and ignoring the emotional pain of hurting her own newly met grandson, Kushina multiplied the golden chains sprouting from her back with a brutal force, wrapping the links of pure spiritual energy around Boruto's arms and legs to pin the possessed body against the stone floor, while feeling the crushing chakra burn her ghostly skin like it was an incredibly powerful and corrosive acid. Minato watched the dark karma marks spread uncontrollably across the kid's neck and realized the parasite was feeding on their despair to accelerate the extraction process, concluding through his strategic genius mind that the only way to avoid the imminent end was to inject the Flying Thunder God formula directly into the root of the cursed seal to mess up the space-time of that genetic rewrite once and for all. The sacrifice required to pull off such a complex and forbidden act was so massive that Naruto tried to stand up to stop his parents from doing something crazy, but his exhausted body, drained by Kurama's absence, betrayed him at the most crucial moment, forcing the Seventh Hokage to crawl across the cold floor while watching helplessly as the Fourth Hokage drove the tip of the kunai into his own grandson's chest with a surgical precision. The second the blade touched the kid's skin, the black karma seals violently clashed with the golden Raijin strokes pouring from Minato's hand, creating a chakra storm so dense and loud that the cave walls began to crack and crumble in massive chunks over them, forcing Kushina to throw up a protective barrier at the very edge of her sanity, just to keep everyone from being crushed alive right there. Momoshiki's echoing double voice laughed hysterically through Boruto's lips while the chains squeezed his bones with relentless force, mocking the desperate attempt of that broken family and claiming with a despicable arrogance that the energy of those old and outdated souls would only serve as the perfect banquet to strengthen his new supreme form that was about to be born from that endless pain. Completely ignoring the villain's sadistic taunts, The yellow flash focused all the love and guilt he held in his heart to push his purified chakra into his grandson's circulatory system, forcing a dangerous fusion that made the dark lines of the curse pulse in a vibrant red tone in a silent spiritual war, where every millimeter of recovered skin cost a fraction of the legendary Hokage's soul. The weight of this insane technique began to collect its merciless toll when the edges of Minato and Kushina's bodies started to flicker and glitch out like damaged holograms, revealing that the life force keeping them in the world of the living was being burned at a terrifying speed to hold back the parasite's advance, putting the two heroes of the past at the very real risk of having their consciousnesses completely erased from existence. For a brief and miraculous second, the storm seemed to settle, and the sinister glow in the kid's eye flickered, giving the false impression that the perfect union of the Uzumaki sealing with the Namikaze genius had finally caged the beast inside a dimensional maze with no way out, bringing a shaky sigh of relief to Naruto's damaged lungs as he believed with all his might that the nightmare was over. The illusion of victory shattered into 1,000 pieces the moment the karma suddenly changed color and absorbed the space-time technique for itself in a dark twist, proving that Momoshiki wasn't being crushed by the Raijin's pressure, but was actually devouring the teleportation formula to integrate that legendary ability into his own destructive arsenal in a way nobody could have ever predicted. With a scream of pure power that echoed like a deafening thunderclap, the being now inhabiting Boruto's body shattered Kushina's indestructible chains like they were made of fragile paper, and slowly stood up with his body covered by a newly grown horn, radiating an overwhelming force that mixed the terrifying aura of the karma with the absolute lethality of the yellow flash. Moving at a speed that not even the highly trained eyes of a war hero could track, Momoshiki used Minato's own mark to teleport directly behind the fallen Seventh Hokage, raising a blade of glowing black chakra to pierce Naruto's heart without giving any chance of defense, while the kid's grandfather made a final and impossible decision that would cost absolutely everything. The deafening impact of the black chakra blade never actually pierced the Seventh Hokage's exhausted chest because Minato Namikaze teleported his own body in front of his son at the last possible millisecond, taking the fatal blow directly into his spiritual stomach and letting the ghostly blood spill across the cave floor while smiling softly to protect his family one more time. Ignoring the mind-blowing pain of having his essence torn apart by the alien weapon, the yellow flash grabbed the possessed grandson's wrist with an unshakable grip, bringing both hands together in a frantic sequence of hand signs that Naruto immediately recognized with an indescribable dread, realizing way too late that his father was summoning the most terrifying and relentless entity that existed in the entire ninja world. The room's temperature plummeted to a purely freezing level the exact moment the macabre figure of the Reaper Death Seal materialized behind Minato, raising its spectral arms and holding a worn dagger that oozed an aura of pure death, waiting patiently for the payment of that cursed contract which demanded the user's own soul as the ultimate and irreversible currency. The arrogant smirk dominating the kid's face vanished instantly when Momoshiki felt the crushing pressure of the mystical deity grabbing his parasite consciousness, trying to pull back and use the newly acquired space-time to escape that icy and inevitable embrace, only to discover with pure shock that Kushina's spiritual chains had wrapped around his legs invisibly to lock down his movements completely. The Uzumaki clan matriarch was crying heavy tears while channeling the very last remnants of her existence to keep the suppression barrier active, screaming with all her might that no arrogant god was going to take the life of her son and grandson in her presence, turning her immense maternal love into the perfect gravitational force that stopped the villain from escaping his imminent judgment. The pale, cadaverous arm of the Shinigami phased through Minato's chest and plunged deep into the heart of the dominated vessel, grabbing the black, pulsing mass of chakra that represented Momoshiki's primordial essence, sparking a terrifying tug-of-war that made Boruto's muscles contort in an inhuman agony, while the parasite fought fiercely not to be ripped from his perfect host. Naruto dragged himself across the floor, desperately begging his father to stop this madness and not sacrifice his soul for the second time. But the fourth Hokage explained with an incredibly weak and breathless voice that he wasn't pulling the parasite into the Reaper's stomach, revealing his genius plan to use the Death God to lock his own soul inside his grandson's mind. By transferring the forbidden seal into the karma that was about to be completed, Minato would turn himself into the ultimate and eternal cage to trap the villain's consciousness, becoming the solitary prison guard who would spend eternity fighting that alien monster inside Boruto's subconscious, just to guarantee the boy could live his own life without the shadow of the looming threat. The Shinigami's blade came down in an invisible arc, slicing once and for all the chakra link connecting the Otsutsuki's mind to the boy's physical body, sealing the macabre pact with a boom that made the very air of the cave shatter in pure spiritual pressure, shoving the yellow flash's heroic essence right into the young Uzumaki's bloodstream in a brutal and absolutely irreversible way. The bizarre horns ruining Boruto's forehead cracked and dropped to the floor like broken glass as the black karma marks violently retreated, shrinking and shape-shifting until they became a tiny glowing golden seal carved right into the center of his chest, proving the unimaginable sacrifice had worked perfectly and that the parasite was finally imprisoned and silenced by the fallen hero's unbreakable will. The totally drained body of the boy collapsed unconscious into Naruto's desperate arms, while Kushina's spirit slowly began to fade away into sparkling dust, smiling with immense pride and a deep sadness over the painful goodbye, truly believing from the bottom of her soul that the tragedy had come to an end and that peace would finally reign over her beloved family after so much bloody fighting. The tranquility of this sacred moment lasted for just one miserable second in the Hokage's mind, because Boruto's closed eyes suddenly and violently snapped open, showing the wild red iris characteristic of a tailed beast, revealing with a nostalgic and terrifying growl that the Reaper Death Jutsu hadn't just brought Minato's soul into his body, but had also unleashed the powerful dark half of Kurama that was trapped forever in the Shinigami's stomach and was now taking over its new young host. The boiling red chakra exploded across the underground room, pushing Naruto back with an overwhelming and incredibly familiar force, while the kid floated in the air, wrapped in the demonic cloak of the nine-tailed fox that everyone believed was lost forever, revealing that the brutal breaking of the Death God's seal had pulled back to the dimension of the living the dark half of the beast that Minato himself took to the grave on the fateful day of the devastating attack on Konoha. The Seventh Hokage tried to scream his son's name in pure panic, believing the kid's battered body wouldn't handle housing such a dense and monstrous entity all at once. But the wild chakra tails calmed down almost instantly when the red, slitted eyes locked onto Naruto's exhausted figure, radiating a feeling of deep recognition and silent respect that froze everyone in the room in a fraction of a second. The fox's rough and guttural voice echoed straight into the village leader's exhausted mind to bluntly warn him that he didn't need to fear for his beloved heir's life, explaining in detail that the fourth Hokage had orchestrated this fusion in the very last millisecond on purpose, so the beast's colossal energy would serve as the ultimate safety lock for the new Karma, providing the raw power needed to suffocate any minimal attempt Momoshiki could make to try and escape Minato's impenetrable cage. Realizing her beloved grandson was finally safe and protected by the crushing life force of two immortal legends who refused to accept defeat, Kushina knelt beside Naruto and touched her son's sweaty face with her trembling, increasingly translucent hands, shedding her final tears of pure relief and absolute pride as she softly said she never doubted the extraordinary man he became to protect the family and the legacy they loved so much in the past. Naruto held his mother's hands with all the desperate strength his broken body still allowed, in a completely useless attempt to stop the miraculous summoning from ending, thanking them with a choked voice for all the unconditional love and immense courage they brought from the afterlife to save Konoha's uncertain future, promising from the bottom of his soul he would never forget the gigantic weight of that sacrifice, and that he would keep fighting until the last breath of his own earthly life. The warm, golden glow of the Raijin shined one last time in a comforting way on Boruto's chest, like a silent and affectionate goodbye from the genius, protective grandfather, while the red habanero's ghostly figure dissolved into the cold, dusty air of the cave, into thousands of sparkling particles that slowly drifted toward the destroyed stone ceiling, leaving the once chaotic room immersed in a dead, peaceful silence that permanently closed the glorious cycle of those legendary heroes in the land of the living. The young ninja's original blue eyes opened slowly and heavily as the demonic slits vanished and the red aura retreated into the small glowing seal carved into his chest, marking in an unforgettable way the rebirth of a kid who now carried the supreme strength of the Uzumaki clan and the tactical mind of the most brilliant Namikaze in history. Taking a deep breath and looking confused, not fully grasping the absurd miracle his own body had just witnessed on the dark edge of death, the hero of Konoha couldn't hold back the massive flood of repressed emotions and hugged the boy with the desperate strength of a father who almost lost his entire world right before his eyes, crying silently on his son's shoulder upon feeling the strong, incredibly steady heartbeats that proved without a shadow of a doubt that the alien parasite's lethal threat had been completely exterminated, replaced by a warm power that connected 3 generations of his bloodline in a pure, unbreakable way. Boruto looked with a mix of awe and shock at his own shaking hands and felt the strong, welcoming presence of the Dark Fox pulsing in perfect harmony, with his grandfather's gentle, distant voice echoing peacefully in the back of his mind, instantly understanding the crushing size of the responsibility he would carry from now on as the new, absolute living guardian of that mystical power, swearing to himself with his head held high that he would honor every drop of sweat and blood spilled to guarantee his village thrived unbeatable. Sasuke finally rushed into the underground chamber wrecked by the spiritual battle and found father and son hugging and leaning on each other amidst the dusty rubble and fully burned scrolls, cracking a rare and genuine relieved smile upon noticing through his sharp eye that the suicide plan had worked with a terrifying perfection, and that the future of the ninja world was gloriously safe in the skilled hands of the new generation, closing once and for all the most terrifying chapter of their lives in a triumphant way. If you felt the hype of this epic story hit you right in the chest, and you loved this absolute team-up of legends to save the ninja world's fate from the clutches of darkness, go ahead and smash that like button right now and subscribe here so you don't miss the insane scripts I keep cooking up with so much passion for you. Keeping in mind there's already another heavy hitter video waiting for you right here on the channel with a brand new unmissable adventure, so click there to watch it right now, and I'll see you in the next story. Peace out and catch you later.